Chapter 15 of The Last Galley, Impressions and Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Aaron James Walker. The Last Galley, Impressions and Tales by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The Lord of Falconbridge. A Legend of the Ring. Part 1 of 3. Tom Cribb, champion of England, having finished his active career by his two famous battles with the terrible Molyneux, had settled down into the public house which was known as the Union Arms at the corner of Panton Street in the Haymarket. Behind the bar of this hostelry there was a green baize door which opened into a large red-papered parlor, adorned by many sporting prints and by the numerous cups and belts which were the treasured trophies of the famous prize-fighter's victorious career. In this snuggery it was the custom of the Corinthians of the day to assemble in order to discuss, over Tom Cribb's excellent wines, the matches of the past, to await the news of the present, and to arrange new ones for the future. Hither also came his brother pugilists, especially such as were in poverty or distress, for the champion's generosity was proverbial, and no man of his own trade was ever turned from his door if cheering words or a full meal could mend his condition. On the morning in question, August 25th, 1818, there were but two men in this famous snuggery. One was Cribb himself, all run to flesh since the time 7 years before, when training for his last fight he had done his 40 miles a day with Captain Barclay over the Highland roads. Broad and deep, as well as tall, he was a little short of 20 stone in weight, but his heavy, strong face and lion eyes showed that the spirit of the prize-fighter was not yet altogether overgrown by the fat of the publican. Though it was not 11 o'clock, a great tankard of bitter ale stood upon the table before him, and he was busy cutting up a plug of black tobacco and rubbing the slices into powder between his horny fingers. For all his record of desperate battles, he looked what he was, a good-hearted, respectable householder, law-abiding and kindly, a happy and prosperous man. His companion, however, was by no means in the same easy circumstances, and his countenance wore a very different expression. He was a tall and well-formed man, some 15 years younger than the champion, and recalling in the masterful pose of his face and in the fine spread of his shoulders something of the manly beauty which had distinguished Cribb at his prime. No one looking at his countenance could fail to see that he was a fighting man by profession, and any judge of the fancy, considering his 6 feet in height, his 13 stone of solid muscle, and his beautifully graceful build, would admit that he had started his career with advantages which, if they were only backed by the driving power of a stout heart, must carry him far. Tom Winter, or Spring, as he chose to call himself, had indeed come up from his Herefordshire home with a fine country record of local successes, which had been enhanced by 2 victories gained over formidable London heavyweights. 3 weeks before, however, he had been defeated by the famous painter, and the setback weighed heavily upon the young man's spirits. "Cheer up, lad," said the champion, glancing across from under his tufted eyebrows at the disconsolate face of his companion. "Indeed, Tom, you take it over hard." The young man groaned, but made no reply. "Others have been beat before you, and lived to be champions of England. Here I sit with that very title. Was I not beat down Broadwater by George Nichols in 1805? What then? I fought on, and here I am. When the big black came from America, it was not George Nichols they sent for. I say to you, fight on, and by George, I'll see you in my own shoes yet." Tom Spring shook his head. "Never if I have to fight you to get there, Daddy." "I can't keep it forever, Tom. It's beyond all reason. I'm going to lay it down before all London at the Fives Courts next year, and it's to you that I want to hand it. I couldn't train down to it now, lad. My day's done." "Well, Dad, I'll never bid for it till you choose to stand aside. After that, it is as it may be." "Well, have a rest, Tom. Wait for your chance, and meantime there's always a bed and crust for you here." Spring struck his clenched fist on his knee. "I know, Daddy. Ever since I came up from Founthorpe, you've been as good as a father to me." "I've an eye for a winner." "A pretty winner. Beaten 40 rounds by Ned Painter." "You had beat him first." "And by the Lord, I will again." "So you will, lad. George Nichols would never give me another shy. Knew too much, he did. Bought a butcher shop in Bristol with the money, and there he is to this day." "Yes, I'll come back on Painter, but I haven't a shilling left. My backers have lost faith in me. If it wasn't for you, Daddy, I'd be in the kennel." Have you nothing left, Tom?
Not the price of a meal. I left every penny I had and my good name as well in the ring at Kingston. I'm hard put to it to live unless I can get another fight. And who's going to back me now?
Tut, man! The knowing ones will back you. You're the top of the list for all Ned Painter. But there are other ways a man may earn a bit. There was a lady in here this morning, nothing flash, boy. A real tip-top out-and-outer with the coronet on her coach asking after you.
Asking after me? A lady?
The young pugilist stood up with surprise and a certain horror rising in his eyes.
You don't mean, Daddy?
I mean nothing but what is honest, my lad. You can lay to that.
You said I could earn a bit.
So, perhaps you can. Enough, anyhow, to tide you over your bad time. There's nothing in the wind there. It's to do with fightin'. She asked questions about your height, weight, and my opinion of your prospect. You can lay that my answers did you no harm.
She ain't making a match, surely.
Well, she seemed to know a tidy bit about it. She asked about George Cooper, and Richmond the Black, and Tom Oliver, always coming back to you, and wanting to know if you were not the pick of the bunch. And trustworthy. That was the other point. Could she trust you? Lord, Tom, if you was a fightin' archangel, you could hardly live up to the character that I've given you.
A drawer looked in from the bar. If you please, Mr. Cribb, the lady's carriage is back again.
The champion laid down his long clay pipe. This way, lad, said he, plucking his young friend by the sleeve towards the side window. Look there, now. Saw you ever a more slap-up carriage? See, too, the pair of bays, 200 guineas apiece. Coachman, too, and footman, you'd find 'em hard to beat. There she is now, stepping out of it. Wait here, lad, till I do the honors of my house. Tom Cribb slipped off, and young Spring remained by the window, tapping the glass nervously with his fingers, for he was a simple-minded country lad with no knowledge of women, and many fears of the traps which await the unwary in a great city. Many stories were afloat of pugilists who had been taken up and cast aside again by wealthy ladies, even as the gladiators were in decadent Rome. It was with some suspicion, therefore, and considerable inward trepidation, that he faced round as a tall veiled figure swept into the room. He was much consoled, however, to observe the bulky form of Tom Cribb immediately behind her as a proof that the interview was not to be a private one. When the door was closed, the lady very deliberately removed her gloves. Then, with fingers which glittered with diamonds, she slowly rolled up and adjusted her heavy veil. Finally, she turned her face upon Spring.
"Is this the man?"
said she. They stood looking at each other with mutual interest, which warmed in both their faces into mutual admiration. What she saw was as fine a figure of a young man as England could show, none the less attractive for the restrained shyness of his manner and the blush which flushed his cheeks. What he saw was a woman of 30, tall, dark, queen-like, and imperious, with a lovely face, every line and feature of which told of pride and breed, a woman born to courts, with the instinct of command strong within her, and yet with all the softer woman's graces to temper and conceal the firmness of her soul. Tom Spring felt as he looked at her that he had never seen nor ever dreamed of anyone so beautiful, and yet he could not shake off the instinct which warned him to be upon his guard. Yes, it was beautiful, this face beautiful beyond belief. But was it good? Was it kind? Was it true? There was some strange subconscious repulsion which mingled with his admiration for her loveliness. As to the lady's thoughts, she had already put away all idea of the young pugilist as a man, and regarded him now with critical eyes as a machine designed for a definite purpose.
"I'm glad to meet you, Mr. Spring,"
said she, looking him over with as much deliberation as a dealer who is purchasing a horse.
"He is hardly as tall as I was given to understand, Mr. Cribb. You said 6 feet, I believe?"
So he is, ma'am, but he carries it so easy. It's only the beanstalk that looks tall. See here, I'm 6 foot myself, and our heads are level, except I've lost my fluff.
"What is the chest measurement?"
43 inches, ma'am.
"You certainly seem to be a very strong young man, and a game one, too, I hope."
Young Spring shrugged his shoulders.
"It's not for me to say, ma'am."
"I can speak for that, ma'am," said Cribb. "You read the Sporting Chronicle for 3 weeks ago, ma'am. You'll see how he stood up to Ned Painter until his senses were beat out of him. I waited on him, ma'am, and I know. I could show you my waistcoat now. That would let you guess what punishment he can take." The lady waved aside the illustration.
"But he was beat,"
said she coldly.
The man who beat him must be the better man.
Saving your presence, ma'am, I think not. And outside Gentleman Jackson, my judgment would stand against any in the ring. My lad here has beat Painter once and will again. If your ladyship could see your way to find the battle money. The lady started and looked angrily at the champion.
Why do you call me that?
I beg pardon? It was just my way of speaking.
I order you not to do it again.
Very good, ma'am.
I am here incognita. I bind you both upon your honors to make no inquiry as to who I am. If I do not get your firm promise, the matter ends here.
Very good, ma'am. I'll promise for my own part, and so I am sure will spring. But if I may be so bold, I can't help my drawers and potman talking with your servants.
The coachman and footman know just as much about me as you do, but my time is limited, so I must get to business. I think, Mr. Spring, that you are in want of something to do at present.
That is so, ma'am.
I understand from Mr. Cribb that you are prepared to fight anyone at any weight.
Anything on 2 legs, cried the champion.
Who did you wish me to fight?
Asked the young pugilist.
That cannot concern you. If you are really ready to fight anyone, then the particular name can be of no importance. I have my reasons for withholding it.
Very good, ma'am.
You have been only a few weeks out of training. How long would it take you to get back to your best?
3 weeks or a month.
Well then, I will pay your training expenses and £2 a week over. Here are £5 a guarantee. You will fight when I consider that you are ready and that the circumstances are favorable. If you win your fight, you shall have £50. Are you satisfied with the terms?
Very handsome, ma'am, I'm sure.
And remember, Mr. Spring, I choose you. Not because you are the best man, for there are 2 opinions about that, but because I am given to understand that you are a decent man, whom I can trust. The terms of this match are to be secret.
I understand that. I'll say nothing.
It is a private match, nothing more. You will begin your training tomorrow.
Very good, ma'am.
I will ask Mr. Cribb to train you.
I'll do that, ma'am, with pleasure. But, by your leave, does he have anything if he loses? A spasm of emotion passed over the woman's face, and her hands clenched white with passion.
If he loses, not a penny, not a penny, she cried. He must not, shall not lose.
Well, ma'am, said Spring, I've never heard of any such match, but it's true that I am down at heel, and beggars can't be choosers. I'll do just what you say. I'll train till you give the word, and then I'll fight where you tell me. I hope you'll make it a large ring.
Yes, said she, it will be a large ring.
And how far from London?
Within 100 miles. Have you anything else to say? My time is up.
I'd like to ask, ma'am, said the champion earnestly, whether I can act as the lad's second when the time comes. I've waited on him the last 2 rights. Can I give him a knee?
No,
said the woman sharply. Without another word she turned and was gone, shutting the door behind her. A few moments later the trim carriage flashed past the window, turned down the crowded Haymarket, and was engulfed in the traffic. The 2 men looked at each other in silence. Well, blow my dicky if this don't beat cockfightin', cried Tom Cribb at last. Anyhow, there's the fiver, lad. But it's a rum go, and no mistake about it. After due consultation, it was agreed that Tom Spring should go into training at the Castle Inn on Hampstead Heath, so that Cribb could drive over and watch him. Thither Spring went on the day after the interview with his patroness, and he set to work at once with drugs, dumbbells, and breathers on the common to get himself into condition. It was hard, however, to take the matter seriously, and his good-natured trainer found the same difficulty. It's the baccy I missed, Daddy, said the young pugilist as they sat together on the afternoon of the 3rd day. Surely there can't be any harm in me having a pipe. Well, well, lad, it's against my conscience, but here's my box, and there's a yard of clay, said the champion. My word, I don't know what Captain Barclay of Uri would have said if he had seen a man smoke when he was in trainin'. He was the man to work you. He had me down from 16 to 13 the second time I fought the black. Spring had lit his pipe and was leaning back amid a haze of blue smoke. It was easy for you, Daddy, to keep strict training when you knew what was before you. You had your date and your place and your man. You knew that in a month you would jump the ropes with 10,000 folk round you and carrying maybe 100,000 in bets. You knew also the man you had to beat, and you wouldn't give him the better of you. But it's all different with me. For all I know, this is just a woman's whim, and will end in nothing. If I was sure it was serious, I'd break this pipe before I would smoke it. Tom Cribb scratched his head in puzzlement.
I can make nothing of it, lad, except that our money is good. Come to think of it, how many men in the last could stand up to you for half an hour? It can't be Stringer, 'cause you've beat him. Then there's Cooper, but he's up Newcastle way. It can't be him. There's Richmond, but you wouldn't need to take your coat off to beat him. There's the Gasman, but he's not 12 stone. And there's Bill Neat of Bristol. That's it, lad. The lady has taken into her head to put you up against either the Gasman or Bill Neat. But why not say so? I train hard for the Gasman and harder for Bill Neat, but I'm blowed if I can train with any heart when I'm fighting nobody in particular and everybody in general, same as now. There was a sudden interruption to the speculations of the two prize fighters. The door opened and the lady entered. As her eyes fell upon the two men, her dark, handsome face flushed with anger, and she gazed at them silently with an expression of contempt which brought them both to their feet with hang-dog faces. There they stood, their long, reeking pipes in their hands, shuffling and downcast, like two great rough mastiffs before an angry mistress.
So,
she said, stamping her foot furiously.
And this is training.
I'm sure we're very sorry, ma'am, said the abashed champion. I didn't think. I never for one moment supposed
that I would come myself to see if you were taking my money on false pretenses? No, I dare say not. You fool!
She blazed, turning suddenly upon Tom Spring.
You'll be beat. That will be the end of it.
The young man looked up with an angry face. I'll trouble you not to call me names, ma'am. I've my self-respect, the same as you. I'll allow that I shouldn't have smoked when I was in training, but I was saying to Tom Cribb here just before you came in that if you would give over treating us as if we were children, and if you would tell us just who it is you want me to fight and when and where, it would be a deal easier for me to take myself in hand. It's true, ma'am, said the champion. I know it must be either the Gasman or Bill Neat. There's no one else. So give me the office, and I'll promise to have him as fit as a trout on the day. The lady laughed contemptuously.
Do you think,
said she,
that no one can fight save those who making a living by it?
By George, it's an amateur, cried Cribb in amazement. But you don't surely ask Tom Spring to train for 3 weeks to meet a Corinthian?
I will say nothing more of who it is. It is no business of yours,
the lady answered fiercely.
All I do say is that if you do not train, I will cast you aside and take someone who will. Do not think you can fool me because I am a woman. I have learned the points of the game as well as any man.
I saw that the very first word you spoke, said Cribb.
Then don't forget it. I will not warn you again. If I have occasion to find fault, I shall choose another man.
And you won't tell me who I am to fight?
Not a word. But you can take it from me that at your very best it will take you, or any man in England, all your time to master him. Now, get back this instant to your work, and never let me find you shirking it again.
With imperious eyes she looked the two strong men down, and then, turning on her heels, she swept out of the room. The champion whistled as the door closed behind her, and mopped his brow with his red bandana handkerchief, as he looked across at his abashed companion. My lord, lad, said he, it's earnest from this day on.
Yes, said Tom Spring solemnly, it's earnest from this day on.
End of chapter 15.